Yeah, so I'll just start with introductions. I think I've met a lot of you. My name is Kathryn Serra. I'm an engineer with C2 Mail, got out of our Latham office. I would say I've been working with you guys for, I think, 13 years now. So we started with 3 kids. Now my oldest is going to middle school. So my goal is to have this done by the time she's going to high school. So we got 3 years to get this done. So, and I do actually have a camera over in Speculator. I was going to go last night and drive over, but the kids are actually at grandparents' house. So my husband and I went to the bar last night. Oh my God, we were stayed up till 9:30 at night. But I was going to say is I would have definitely come to the meeting this weekend. It's not far from our camp, but I trip to Vermont on my way there. So I really appreciate they were able to make it work for my schedule. And it is a really good morning. So I'll just give a brief history for folks who are, I guess, newer to the process. So C2 Mail was hired and we did what's called the engineering assessment to look at a lot of conditions that the State Department of Environmental Conservation, DEC, Division of Dam Safety Regulations dam. The results were essentially that what's there today is severely deficient from a hydraulic perspective, meaning there's a certain spillway flood that it has to pass. That flood is termed 1/2 of the probable maximum flood, which really to anybody but me means nothing. But the probable maximum flood is a 3-day storm that it deposits about 30 inches of rain in your watershed. And basically you have that rain event and a computer model rain over the watershed, and then you divide it by 2. So it's completely theoretical, but it represents a hurricane coming out the East Coast and kind of parking over the Adirondacks. Tropical Storm Irene did produce a 1/2 PMF storm in the Catskills in 2011. So it is, you know, people say it's a lot of water. It's a flood that has happened and frankly might start to happen more often. So that flow is about 6,000 cubic feet per second. Right now, your spillways can pass about 150 cubic feet per second. So unfortunately, the result is that your spillways are completely insufficient to pass that required storm event. And thus DEC kind of has you in their little watch list. So finally, we're able to find money. I always joke that I do a lot of work in public municipal work, water and sewer, that there's funding out there, and dams just seem to be that, you know, thing where there's literally no money. Finally, there is some. So I was very happy that we were able to get the grant to be able to hire us to start doing actual engineering design. So what we've done since we've been hired to do this scope of work, we did a full boundary survey of the area. The grant required us to hire out about 30% of our work to minority and women-owned businesses. So we had a firm to do a survey for us. And the soil borings that were done about a month ago were done by Atlantic Testing out of Canton. So that work's complete. The other scope of work that CTO was hired to do is really just refine what we had done about 12 years ago. And produce you 5 concept plans for your consideration. So we're at that point now. I'm comfortable with where we're at. I do have some refinement I need to do. I think I'd let Roy and Ann know that we are a little behind in the survey work. Unfortunately, the CAD person that was doing all the work for me had emergency surgery, so I kind of was scrambling this week, but I'm actually happy with what I'm able to present to you. I kind of had all the numbers down. I really wanted to give you something that made sense. So thankfully, someone was able to jump off another job and help me out this week to get these plans ready. So I guess first I'll show you, this is the draft survey map from Meyer Biggs Clark Davis. They did issue me a final very late yesterday. I was having them do additional research to determine if the town owns the road and the bridge and the dam, not just like, you know. So the result of that, which again, I haven't printed it out because they sent it to me just as I was walking out the door, is that they were not able to find any proof that Crossroad is owned by the town. However, there's evidence that it's a use by prescription. So the final map will show a 3-foot road, a 49.5 foot by use prescription by the town of Johnsburg. but technically speaking, the parcel of land is owned by the GLCA. So that was confirmed that there is no ownership by the town of Johnsburg on this, but because of the use of it, that it's a prescriptive right of way. So the ultimate.
Can I just add one thing?
Yep.
In our DEC inspection of the Dam Road Bridge Complex in 2018, in the letter they sent to us, they also sent it to the town saying, because of their interest, because of the road over the dam, that they do have ownership. They actually use that word. So
Correct.
And I sent that to
So
Fred
from
the
a
other day.
legality perspective, we say legal, the surveyors do look at legal documents. They delve way back, and that surveyor is saying it's a road by use. There's they call it a prescriptive right of way, which really what our surveyors at C2L described what that means is it just means that the town of Johnsburg has used it for so many years that they have now rights to use that, we'll say 3-rod road, but they don't actually own it. There's no dedication of it. So essentially it is still a, it's owned by the private property owners that are shown. So I will issue separate maps on Ryan Biggs Clark Davis letterhead stamped. That's going to show the boundary survey separate from the deliverables by CT mail. So I do have something basic now that is just shows what they came up with, which people, if you're interested, you can take a look at it, but it's not final. So I didn't want to, print and issue them.
It has a bridge number. And I thought that was a New York State issue.
Correct. Yeah, New York State gives numbers to every bridge, regardless of who owns it, just for their.
So that doesn't indicate on there. So you don't send it to the town saying I should fix your bridge. No, you send it to us. Come on.
So that's kind of a sidebar.
Yes, I ever do.
Yeah, so that's kind of a sidebar that because we did have to do a lot of research with boundary survey for this work, that we did ask our surveyor to spend a little more time. So I think that's actually what deep down we all thought it was going to say, but we were just really curious that is there something way back that says Crossroad is a town road, like, other, not to say you need ownership of this, but just incidentally, you maintain it, it's your road. It's a road by your use. It's not an actual dedicated road.
2 roads now.
Yeah, and there's no easement. So technically speaking, it's just you've always maintained it. Therefore, I guess technically in the future you could stop and it wouldn't be a, so it's kind of, there are a lot of roads by use and prescription across New York State, especially in rural areas.
Did the surveyors finish their survey in the lake?
It's all done. Yeah, they went far out as I needed them to. Yeah.
I'm looking for the code.
I didn't see him in the wind blowing.
I know, I'm looking for the code.
Yeah, they did go
When I
back.
find
They
it,
went
I'll
back
send
out
it to
a few weeks later to get the
All right.
information.
So for God's sakes. All right. All right, bye.
Would there be a reason to, I don't know how towns own possession?
I would
Would
say
it be something that?
you can have that discussion. I don't know. I can't say how the town would react. There's no evidence that there's ever was a prohibition. That it's Garnet Lake Civic Association property.
Yeah, I don't.
I
Like I say, I was always told that if we worked out, then we would have some ownership of the dam. That's as you people know, the financial burden that would be in the town has no one.
Yep.
Until I'm told by our town attorneys. If I can work on it, I mean, this grout we want it done. I mean, I can remember doing that when I was an employee there. Dan sent me out to do it. And I have no problem helping out anyway. But until a town attorney tells me that I can go ahead legally and do this, I can't have it.
and that's why I say it's purely, in my opinion, it's purely a legal matter. So I kind of want to just open with that. That's kind of a sidebar. Obviously, I'll present the maps to you as final, but you'll see it'll say a prescriptive 49.5 foot use, not a right of way, not ownership.
which basically takes it out here. So over to the I would say the good stuff. So I spent some time going through, essentially, this would be a complete replacement of the dam, any option we choose. Thus, the construction and the design has to meet current DEC standards, which is to pass the 1/2 of the probable maximum flood without overtopping the dam, with caveats. So I'm presenting to you the first option, and I'll go through it. So the issue with kind of what I'm giving you is that to get, right now it can pass 150 CFS. We need to, get 6,000. We don't have a lot of height to play with. And with these large floods, the more height of water you put, it's exponentially more flow can go through. So height is an advantage. I have that here. So we need to go wider, which then results in a ton of issues with this is my, property. So what I did was I looked at maximizing how much additional height I could put on the road. So today the auxiliary spillway is at elevation 1452.5. So I'll just start calling out, 52.5. The most I'm comfortable raising the whole road up to is elevation 1470, which does result in grading going back to Bob's driveway and to your driveway. It's pretty reasonable. It's not a lot of fill. It's basically filling about 6 inches at the intersection here, filling about 4.5 feet over the auxiliary spillway. So in the grand scheme of things, I think that's completely reasonable. You're not having any issues with slope. We're trying to keep that 10%, which is a guidance that don't get around that roads don't listen to 10%. So that was my first foray, was how high can I raise it? Because we need to gain elevation.
When you say road, you mean just the road, or you mean surrounding embankments also?
Correct. Yeah, but really looking at the physical infrastructure of the road, how much can we raise it up? Because we need to maintain, that needs to be a road in perpetuity. So that gains us about 4.5 feet over the auxiliary spillway, about 2 feet to 6 inches, depending on where you are along Cross Road, Garnet Lake Road. So what I looked at, the first option was completely meeting DEC standards for passing that spillway design flow without overtopping the dam, which is the top of the road. So the first option I present meets all applicable criteria. It is technically a 5.5 foot clear opening with 90-foot clear span. Talk to Fort Miller, they're a precaster out of Schuylerville, but I won't do a whole lot. The largest box culvert they can give me is a width of 20 feet. So if you look at the profile, I accomplished 90 feet of opening in 3 20s and a 10. And then each box culvert has a side thickness of 1 foot. So if you just lay them out side to side to side, it ends up being about 100 feet, because you have, you lay them side to side to side. And my goal was to use the eastern limit as your existing side of your dam to not impact the Weymouth property. So basically, I took that limit, this is more helpful, the eastern limit, and went that distance over here. So this is your, I'm going to call this a 90-foot wide spillway. It just really box culverts make the most sense here structurally, efficiently. I looked at doing bridge setups, talked to the engineers at Fort Miller, and because they're basically span bridges that are 3-sided and you pour a concrete base, it really isn't going to work here because you need more height structurally. So initially I was like, can you get me, an 80-90 foot clear span bridge? And they're like, no, it's not going to work. It needs to be, 10-15 feet high structurally. So I think the box culvert is actually, because it's precast, it's driven up, they're not big sections. It's much more modular. It's easier to build, quicker to build. So that was kind of the initial look, was we decided on using these box culverts from Fort Miller to be really your spillway.
Somehow they fit together.
Correct. And what these are
Okay.
concept plans. They're technically speaking, you'll see a flare in here. Ultimately, if any of these options are chosen, we go to final design. I'd likely slightly straighten out crossroads so everything's there, but you can actually flare them and just pour the concrete through. You look at that with consideration of foundation as well. So these are really plans to show you how can we make this work from that hydraulic perspective. we haven't done, the structural design, foundation design.
Kathryn, what is the present water level on this elevation?
It is a 63.8.
63.8.
And the inverts, I'm keeping the same inverts you have today, but they're 63.3. So I'm going to talk about that. So I will go through what I like and I don't like about options, because that's kind of how I operate. Is I like this option because it meets the DEC criteria, because ultimately at the end of the day, what we choose has to be approved by DEC. What I don't like is that with right now, I'm going to talk about base flow in the lake or dry periods. In this particular case, it's likely that it could drop the lake level during dry periods, because instead of having, technically 20 feet of opening with your current arch culverts, now you're having 90. So I did run some models for your base flow during a low flow, which is about 25 CFS. And in this case, if you don't have rain, you could drop the lake level a few inches. So I don't like that, because I know you're sensitive to that. So I'll talk about a second option where I play around with, staggering the heights of the box culverts to get you kind of a low flow option and a high flow scenario.
So we're doing the height basically at the kind of where the
Everything's
inverts.
correct. Because again, we don't want to be significantly altering the lake level, because that opens up a second permit process with DEC or say fisheries. So we try to stay similar to what we have today. That's what people's docks are set to. That's what you're used to. If we significantly alter the lake level, then we have to deal with that, the biology of the lake. How are we affecting it? So with this option, it would kind of be the same. I'll say downstream of the dam, it's going to be a concrete, the flat portion of the spillway. It's really just an energy dissipator. I'm assuming 10 feet for now. Any final decisions, we determine if it needs to be longer to dissipate energy. So really looking at what's this going to look like? It's going to be that everything on the lake side is going to be just cut down. There's going to be no more of a kind of that area on the lake side. It'll be just you're sitting there in a canoe and it is a wall of box culverts. On the downstream side, the grading is again bringing it and towing it in. So this option likely is going to have significant riprap coming through. It's basically, we're not going to widen Mill Creek downstream of the dam. We're not doing that. We're not going to get permission to, therefore we're not doing that. Is this game of we've got to design the energy dissipation to get it down here. So more than likely, all of this will have to be riprap, which a lot of it is now. So it's not a significant alteration from what you have. But yes, this looks very large, but we always knew with the preliminary calculations we did about 10 years ago that you needed something that was about this size. So this option I like because it fully meets the DEC criteria. I don't like the potential for lake level drop during dry periods. So we'll talk about some solutions.
Even if it doesn't drop, it's stagnant.
Correct.
The water purifies it and
Exactly.
the algae blooms.
Now, can I ask how far across it goes to the other side, the western side?
Yep, it actually still is on Garnet Lake property completely. It doesn't technically go on to the Manning's property. Grading does, the physical structure doesn't.
I'm just concerned, obviously, what it's gonna look like after, because I haven't seen that area.
How much of Garnet Lake, come over here.
Oh, yeah.
I'm following along too.
It's a little
So,
bigger over here,
If
maybe.
you look at this
How
blue
much is
line
left of
here,
Garnet
this
Lake
is Garnet Lake property, this is Bob's property. Really what we're doing is we're sandwiching it in the strip of road that's fully owned by,
And then what's the distance from?
So from here to here,
but 10 feet.
oh, so I'm gonna go from 80 feet
Mhm.
to 10.
Yep.
Okay, that's.
Yep.
I like that, obviously.
Yep. So yes, I'm gonna flip to the second option and we can go back and forth. So the second option is one that I had to present to DEC to get their buy-in. This is an option where we allow for some overtopping of the road. That was a firm no 10 years ago. It's become I'm willing to consider it. So this option is instead of a 90-foot clear opening, it's about 60 feet of clear opening. So it's 3 20-foot sections. Using the same eastern limit, kind of where it is now. And what this does is obviously it completely shortens up the length of it. But it is going to result in significant armoring or stabilization on the downstream side of the dam, likely by very large riprap and or concrete. So I don't show those limits because I'd have to run the calculations during final design, but it will not be a nicely graded slope. It will be likely DEC would make us do something with concrete.
That's on the backside towards me.
Yep. Just for your reference, how I've designed it is it's 0.6 of a foot over this whole area. And that occurs during 5 hours of that significant storm event. So it's not going to happen during your 100-year flood. Right now, your auxiliary spillway activates frankly all the time. It's not going to happen during a 100-year flood. It's not going to happen during a 500-year flood. So you're not going to be like now where it activates all the time and it flows over the road. This would be during this really theoretical design storm, during a worst case situation. I call it the Noah flood. But this is something that we have to tread lightly, meaning if this is what you want to pursue, I have to go to the DEC and get permission. Because I don't want to sit there and design it and go to permits and have them say, yeah, well, we change our mind about allowing overtopping. So
Well, but that's a significant difference.
it is a significant difference.
66
Correct.
to
It's-
95.
Yes.
And we're only half a foot over.
Yep.
Wouldn't one more 10-foot box? get
One
you
more
below
10-foot
the road
box gets you
surface?
to the point where you might as well just do the whole thing. And that's going to be what DEC is going to say. They're going to say, all right, you can do an 85-foot one to get you a few inches. Why don't you do a 90? So I would
Thinking more, so
like to present this to DEC and see if they'll bite. But my suspicion is they're going to ask what fully meets regulations. And I'm going to show them that. And they're going to go, okay, they're not that. At the end of the day, there is not a significant difference between these options. It's obviously significant to the property owners, but in the eyes of the state, and their job is to regulate construction of high hazard dams. I would have to do a lot of sweet talking, I think, to get them to buy into this, because it is definitely feasible to build a dam that meets the criteria. If I could demonstrate that it's literally not possible to meet the criteria, then I'd have more of an argument. But we could obviously present this as this is disruptive to, access agreements, the lake and such. But I like this option because it's less impactful to the property owners. I don't like it because I'd really have to get buy-in from the state if we were to decide on this alternative.
and that's 0.6 feet
Mhm.
to the new road level.
Yes, and the road is still raised up. It's just the exact same raising up of the road. So it is grading over to Bob's driveway over, to your driveway, but it's.
And what is it that keeps us from just going 0.6 feet further? Is it the slope on the downside?
Oh,
or-
it would be grading way up on people's lots. Yeah, so
We're talking 0.6 feet.
of overtopping.
over top.
If I were to raise the road up 0.6 feet, the water would need to go higher.
Yeah.
There's only so much flow that can go through here, and it has to, once it goes over the road, the
Right,
water's
yeah,
just like,
okay, you
woo-hoo,
can
going
get the
over.
extra
Yeah.
flow, but
There's a-
area, but it's incremental.
Half a foot of water over the road is a lot of flow. It's if I showed you like the hydraulic calculations, the water, a typical spillway, the water just runs over it, right? It runs over it. Here we actually are confining the water. So
Yeah.
again, I like this, but my reservation is whether or not the regulators will approve it. And
think the lead time would be what you asked.
they lost their director. I don't know.
Okay.
I can put a request in for a meeting, and just be like, look, you gave us this grant. We're gonna replace the dam. We need to know if you even consider this option because, and I think I can get them to answer me. It won't be formal. It won't be like a letter, but you'll.
Yes or no?
Yes, because I don't want to sit here and go, oh, let's proceed with this. We go, you hire us to do the final design. We get to DEC and they're like, no,
So you mean dominance is down?
dominance is somewhere else.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know. So the guy replacing is Don Canistrari, who's been around forever. He's great. So I really do think it's going to be a delay for us to get any sort of approval of an option that does not fully meet criteria. But I would suggest that we ask but I'm on the fence as to whether they grant it, really.
Okay.
Yep.
Then it would impact the overall visual of the lakeside a little differently. It's a little smaller, a lot more riprap on the backside, more armory.
Yeah. And that's why I say is, I think they, because the option that fully meets regulation isn't that substantially out of line, meaning it's buildable. If it was something where we'd have to build something like, you know, here to here, that just didn't make sense. Something that you literally couldn't build, they probably would be willing to consider it. But because I've been able to demonstrate that I can get something to work, that's why I say is I don't think they'd ultimately grant you that design waiver, unfortunately.
And how important is the riprap?
It's very important to them.
10 years later, once it's covered with sand and grass.
That is
Does it
very
have to
important to
stay
them.
riprap?
And that's why
Or
I
does it
say
have
is
to-
they likely might make you have it be a concrete. For that reason.
Okay.
If they do decide to relax their standards, they might
I mean, it's
then,
riprap out there now, but it's just full of sand.
oh yeah, and
dirt.
that's why is I think ultimately they would say, if they do grant it, fine, that entire thing is a giant concrete face.
Behind the lake.
Behind the lake, all the way down to the creek.
I'd rather have the lakeside look.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Backside.
The overall aesthetic of it. And once you go industrial, we have, you know, Tappan Zee Bridge going across. there.
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
As opposed to something that's small and just well built on the backside.
I don't think people really
It's an
care what
option
the
that I think
backside
might be
looks
worth
like.
exploring.
compared to-
Even if it's a hard no right away, at least we know.
Yes, I'd rather just
No,
go to
it's
them
more
and
about how
say
we have
yes
to
or
keep
no.
it clean.
Right.
If
That
we
too,
have to
absolutely.
scrape off the
Yeah.
riprap,
Okay, right,
then,
right.
Yeah, that won't
Maintenance.
happen.
Yeah.
you know, if we
Yeah.
can just hose down concrete
There you go.
once a year and blow silt into the
Yeah.
Mill Creek if they allow that.
So,
Another factor to maybe consider is looking ahead 20 years. Will the DEC be up in their requirements?
yeah, and I say probably, but right now, any new dam, it's not a new dam, it's a rehab, needs to provide 1 foot of freeboard. So meaning, we don't have to do it here. And I'm not gonna do it here because you don't want to see what I come up with one foot of freeboard.
What is 1 foot of freeboard?
Meaning 1 foot between the top of the dam and the peak water surface during the design foot.
One, okay, so we have to be 9 foot,
2 feet.
2 feet high. What? Really?
Serious. Yeah, so we're not gonna go there because it's not gonna work. So,
Well, if that's that high, then that would mean the water would be up to the people.
well, it's just freeboard. The problem is it's calculation for freeboard. Yeah, it's hard because a lot of the ability for a spillway to pass the design flood is a height of water,
Hey,
you know. So, yeah, so I would say we have to wait and see, but they haven't changed the flood flows in about 15 years. So I'm gonna go to option 3, which is my cute option, which isn't gonna fly, but I thought I'd show it to you. So this is an option where we keep the auxiliary spillway where it is, where Crossroad dips down, which I'm sure is everyone's favorite spot. Raise up the road over where the pipes are now and install 3 60-inch and 2 24-inch culverts. However, this would require the entire area I show hatched to be an engineered concrete channel. And I actually don't think DEC would ultimately okay this, but this was something that people were asking if we could try to keep with what's there and use that auxiliary spillway. So I did present this as an option, but this is probably something that is almost just cute and fictitious and DEC would never allow, because literally that entire area would be an engineered dam. So access would be just,
But do I read the notes right? You stay below the water surface the road surface at peak flood.
well, this
The auxiliary-
entire
The auxiliary spillway meets requirements,
means requirements, meaning it activates after the 100-year flood.
which is what we're shooting for.
I don't necessarily think DEC is going to approve this just because of the amount of flow that goes through here. But I can ask them. I would say this would be the absolute least thing they would ever consider. But it was to see if we could argue our way to something that sort of utilizes what we have today in that auxiliary spillway, that low point in the road.
Mhm.
But it would literally be like a concrete channel all the way to the lake and then all the way back. And actually, I don't think the fisheries people would allow the concrete channel on the lakeside. Because you're basically taking away a slope on a lake and filling it with concrete. So
Okay, putting on speaker.
this would be a complete, I'd say, permit nightmare. I think they would approve this if we had no other
I'm
options.
sorry, I thought I understood.
Yeah.
Say that again because.
The
of
lakeside, to sit here and have this whole huge section of lakefront basically be concrete is a major issue to the biologist at DEC. So
Given the whole amount of shoreline,
Yep.
100 feet.
we've been working with a marina on Stern Lake for 5 years to get a replacement of a concrete armoring wall on an existing marina. So when I say DEC dam safety is easiest to work with, I'm really not kidding. Your APA is gonna get involved in this. DEC biologists are gonna get involved in this. So, not to scare you, but those
Well,
engineers at
the
dam
rest of the
safety are your friends. Compared to
Oh,
the
yeah?
regulators.
You ask for this and we shoot for option two.
Absolutely, I want right now.
Yeah, I did this for exactly what you just said, is to show them like the worst option ever, right? You're like, really, because,
This is what the damn people want, the community wants, so you know it's not.
Yes.
So,
yes, yep,
Oh.
So we're saying that.
it wouldn't be over here. It would be flooding this whole thing, but it would not flood over here. Yep. Yeah.
We're not accurate.
Yeah.
That's the 100-year.
You have to set the auxiliary spillway above the 100-year flood event. That's
There's concrete, there would be concrete running across the spillway to stop that.
all the way from down to the below the water level, over the road, all the way down about 100 feet back into the Mill Creek.
We're talking about the backside.
And
Oh,
front.
and.
The front's the issue. The whole front's the
Oh, yeah.
issue.
So it'd all be concrete. with
There'd be
road over
concrete,
top.
right?
So where you have access now, that is probably a grass beach would be an ugly concrete. floor.
Okay, nothing.
I'm just saying.
No, I know what you're
I
saying.
wouldn't like that.
It's
I
a
don't want
grass
that.
beach, but it's supposed to be a rock beach. I mean, literally, it's riprap.
Oh, great, but if that was my access to the lake, I wouldn't be, that's what I say is,
I just didn't understand.
I
I guess.
presented this
I saw the
because,
smaller bridge. You know?
well, it's,
Not his favorite. Okay, we got that.
well, and I don't think,
Retract my vote.
I don't think DEC's, I presented this because it's a bargaining chip with DEC.
No, it's an interesting option. The size is small.
The
but the-
APA and the biologists would absolutely lose their mind over this option.
Yeah.
There's only one fish that eats that.
There is. You haven't got it yet.
No. Probably, yeah, I think what you have now is just so short, it blocks more. But yes, that would be potential for more maintenance than the clear openings. So option 4 is actually, I'm gonna call this my favorite. You know, everyone does have a favorite child, we should admit it. My favorite child changes by the moment. So this is an option that still fully meets DEC criteria. No road overtop. The only difference from, well, and 2 differences from the first option is I have a section of a 20-foot box culvert that I'm sitting at that invert of 63.3, which is your existing invert. And that's going to be your low flow channel. So during most periods, the flow is only going to go through that 20 feet. It's basically going to mimic what you have today. The rest of the spillway is actually 6 inches higher. And you might say 6 inches doesn't make a big deal, but it actually does make a big deal during your low flow periods, during your normal flow periods. This option will not have that lake level fluctuation like the first one. I do need an additional 5 feet of spillway opening though. So it really is a much it's bigger than the first option, but I like this better because you're not having the issue of I'm gonna be draining your lake during low flow periods. It's only 5 foot more, instead of 90 feet of box culverts, it's 95. But it does go basically 100% on the strip that the Garnet Lake Civic Association owns. So, and I say I like this because it's easier to permit, it fully meets DEC criteria, and it has a low flow consideration. I did look at options of flashboards, and I simply could not get anything that resembled anything that was gonna work. I really looked at, could we do flashboard? No. I tried the way that the amount of spillway, we'd have to go way out into the lake, you know, you'd be talking something way out here, just blocking your access, blocking, you know, Steve's access. It just wasn't something that I think anyone would have been okay with.
I didn't see this before. So now we don't have an auxiliary spillway because we have the flow
The only
capacity
option,
to do whatever it is we need to do.
Yes.
So do we care at all? Does something have to happen on the backside? Or not?
well, you're gonna have your concrete energy dissipator all the way down. So yeah, it's just the backside of the dam.
Okay.
If
But
you
then
took
we
the-
no longer have spillway questions or spillway maintenance or anything else
No.
like that.
Well, you're maintaining the box culverts,
Yeah.
which is a lot less maintenance. You get a giant tree that comes down and ends up sideways. Yeah, you might need to pull it off, but
We take
you're
them
not gonna
all
have the
in.
debris issues that you do now with your smaller pipes. So the only difference between this one and the first option I presented is one section of the box culverts sits lower than the rest. And it's but then it has to be 5 feet of additional width to account for the others being set up higher. But when I say I like this one the most, it's because it gives the flow flexibility. The issue here at Garnet Lake is you need to design a dam to pass this incredible flow, but you also need to consider how it's going to operate during normal conditions. And it's very hard.
Which is
It's that Goldilocks complex, right? Like,
And equally important to us.
yes.
Aren't there some legalities of stopping water flow to residents below the natural stream? The new bill without this drop section under low flow stops the creek.
It doesn't stop the creek. It's gonna just result in the water potentially, you know, your lake fluctuates, right? It's gonna just be during low flow periods. It could drop even more than it does today.
Right.
It would always still have a base
There's always
flow.
gonna be a flow.
There's always gonna be a flow.
Right.
But it just might be,
This will mitigate some
It
of
might
that
be
crazy
happen-
fluctuation, so
Correct.
you'll always have more of the current through the larger box, the lower box.
yes, that's what I say is I like this because it is very much, you know, right now you would just have flow in the lower culvert. You know, you might get a thunderstorm, but it's been dry.
The
You
last
know,
one was gone in a day.
yeah, and it depends on, you know, it's been so dry all summer. Last summer it was so wet, any rain event you had just flashed and immediately raised the lake level.
Half the years we go dry anyway,
Yeah.
the way it is now. Anything bigger is gonna accentuate that to potentially
Correct.
always every August.
Yes,
So your option one, the invert height was 1463.3, so it was basically the same height all the way across as the lowest one.
Yeah.
On depth.
correct.
And
That's
you're
the
getting this-
difference. Yep,
Bring us another hip foot, which is what we were talking about, before, trying to get it up.
yes,
Where we used to have before.
yes.
But you would, this is, you can do this without having to put in operable flashboards and stuff.
Which aren't allowed.
Right.
Well, and if I do put in flashboards, then I have to pretend like they're there permanently, and that raising a lake level is terrible for these calculations. If you want to raise a lake level up, you're raising crossroad 2 or 3 more feet over what I'm already proposing. So again, people like flashboards, they're just not allowed.
At which point-
They used to be.
Because to be fair, if a giant flood comes and you don't pull them and your dam fails because the spillway capacity was reduced, you can see why the state doesn't allow them. You know, even if you're the best at maintaining, if a flood comes and no one's up here, or all of a sudden the water's too high and you can't safely pull them, the dam on its own without any human intervention needs to be able to pass these flood events. So,
So that option, the lower culvert, the one, is it gonna make the lake?
That's the
lower?
same invert as the culverts are today. Everything is keeping with the same elevations of the existing culverts you have.
So the lowest.
Just
one
going
is
up.
At our. current
Yes, we're just, everything is what's there today and we're going up. I'm not physically proposing to build a culvert any lower than we have today.
The width of this lowest culvert, is that the width of that equal to the 3 culverts we have? now? Is
About,
it-
yeah, it's about 20
Can you
feet.
make it smaller?
I would then have to make these more. I can make it more narrow, but then I need to make,
Yeah, if you're losing some net flow area below it. by shrinking it, so-
Can I ask a silly question? What if can you move the entire thing 5 feet towards Bill Creek?
is
4
Steve on
feet,
the call?
3 feet?
Sorry,
Move it
no.
north.
Yeah, move it north, a foot, 2 feet. What does that do?
Maybe.
Do that or no?
Well, it doesn't,
Does that help?
does
I don't
not-
know.
I would say that would be a final design consideration. It doesn't help anything hydraulic.
But does it help as far as Steve's place? Well, his place isn't moving, my access. Like, obviously. what's
I would
happening
say
locally.
substantially no. This is initial designs to get a general scope and then we go to final.
Well, I don't know,
design.
if you moved it 5 feet, you create more space. I don't, just. a
That,
thought.
we can work through that, but at the end of the day, you're still gonna have the road going up.
Sure.
So at the end of the day, yes, we can sit there and go, hey, can we shift something 2 feet back? But it's not
That
gonna.
creates more space, usable space than.
Correct.
No, just a-
And generally, no. It might make a little tweak here and there, but at the end of the day, it's still gonna be impactful no matter
I
what.
can see that, yeah.
With this design for also, I mean, with the lower culvert will also, I mean, it'll add aesthetically a little bit to the water flow. Because now we're gonna. push it
Yes,
down to
it's-
a culvert
it's
section, so
pushed-
You'll see more flow
yes.
than just a
It's
trickle of
correct.
green.
Yep, it's
Yeah.
pushed back to being during low flow periods similar to what you have today.
Right, so it'll let the upper boxes, they can dry out, more of the flow will be
Yep.
condensed into the 20-foot section.
Mhm.
So aesthetically, you have more water going over and then everything else will dry, so just a long
Yes.
box culvert that's.
With
just
a little bit of flow.
slowly trickling down,
Yes, yep,
growing out.
Yep.
Okay,
So for the ducks live.
they love it.
yeah. So I'm just gonna go to flip it because you guys need a drain. Don't have a drain, you need one. So low level drains. It's required that the drain be sized to drop the lake 90% of its storage in 2 weeks. And it is a completely theoretical calculation.
This is a must.
This is a
Something
must.
must.
If you have to do this. If you're gonna replace your dam, you're gonna have to put in a low level drain. So this is a must, and I've given you 2 options, both of which it's gonna be who gets the drain and who doesn't. I'm presenting the first, it has to be a 36-inch size drain. Prefer our RCP, which is reinforced concrete piping. And it basically has to go out to almost your lowest lake level, which I'm showing is invert 1456. And it's gonna discharge back into the creek at 53.5.
Manual valve.
With a
operation?
manual valve operation in an 8-foot diameter called a valve manhole. So this is all below grade. It's all below the ground. The only thing you're gonna see is a manhole cover. So what I did was I took a look at and said, all right, the drain can't go through any of our future spillways. So this is the larger future spillway kind of shown here. The first option is for it to cut right across the dock area of the Weymouth property. And if he's listening, I'm sure he's, not very happy.
How far out?
That is about, I'd say 50 to 60 feet out.
Is that on the bottom of the lake? Is that?
Near it.
So that's showing, well, the bottom of the lake, I mean, when you define the bottom, is this the bottom of the lake with all the silt and everything?
No, this is the bottom of the lake immediately adjacent to the dam.
Immediately. I mean, the bottom of the lake with all that.
Deep.
Correct.
But it's close to 10 feet right out. in
Yeah.
front.
If you get far enough out away from.
Yeah, this is at the deepest. The second option is a very it works, but it goes all the way around. The valve manhole is gonna be on Bob's property, right by the intersection, crosses the road, we have another manhole and it turns and it comes out this way. So again, the only thing you'll see is the end sections of the pipes and the manhole covers. So I show 8-foot diameter just to show you presently what it would be below the ground, but it's a typical 30-inch manhole, you know, cast structure coming out of the ground.
Is there an elevation view to see? So the top of the pipe is actually at the silt level.
The bottom of the pipe is silt level, so it will be
So it
sticking
would
out.
be,
Yeah.
so 3 foot above the silt level there
It
translates to what? I was just trying to figure out.
translates to this contour here. 1, 2, 3.
Right, so so we pick this dock and structure up from mountains. And then it would run underneath
Correct.
that without showing?
Yep.
Okay.
And the manhole would be
Across
where,
the street.
across the street where the street sign is up on the side.
Well, on our property, that's the key, right? This guy's on our property.
I'm
That looks
showing,
like Maine's property.
this
No.
is the corner of this is technically the GLCA.
Well,
I do have the
Say the
valve
blue one.
structures
Yeah,
in
pretty cool.
GLCA property for maintenance reasons. The piping obviously is, in any case, the drain is circuitous route, but you need to put it in. And you can't put it just below the spillway. What doesn't work for inverts, like you can't put it there. It's got to go over and around. That's the issue.
And depending on the type of dam you decide to go with, will also probably enable or help some of the, because if you have to excavate out spillway anyways for structure, you've already done half the work for getting depth.
Yes.
But if you have to compromise the road where you weren't planning on. Right, so there's a cost constraint. also
Basically,
to
the drain
plan
has to
to-
be away from the spillway. Or we'll say you know, just literally, because this is all concrete, you're gonna have foundations. I mean, I'm not showing the limits of the foundation. It's just a limit of physically what you're gonna see.
Okay.
So, you know, I can't have the drain, I guess you could cast it in the foundation that ultimately the final structure will design. But these are some preliminary locations for the drain. Both of which have to go on private property. That's what I'm trying to show here. That when I say it's gonna be who gets the drain, that sadly, I can't get a drain to work that's wholly on GLCA property. Under any circumstance, whether we choose whether DEC lets us do the 60-foot wide spillway, or whether we go with a big one. We just simply don't have the real estate.
So for the drain, the manhole cover, is it what you would see?
Yes,
as-
yeah. The
it's
physical,
flat, it's against the ground. I mean,
Yes.
So it's not.
Yep.
Because now we have that white pipe that sticks out.
Yep.
that-
so it'll be a traditional manhole cover. The valve unit in there is buried. It's an 8-foot diameter structure. It's huge, but like it's not like you see 8 feet of concrete sticking out. A traditional,
But how do you lift it to get operational?
It's just a manhole.
Just
cover.
like a manhole cover.
you have the manhole cover and you have the valve stem right there. I have a stem that
But you don't have to
extends.
pick up the whole 8-foot thing to do it.
So,
We have to pick up the manhole cover and then you got some
Yeah.
tool to open it.
so does that tool get left in somebody's house and you come over? Turn it or what?
You hang it inside the chamber.
We decide-
Can we lock it so we don't have somebody come?
It's going to be it's going to be a turn.
Yeah,
So no extra tool.
oh, it's actually gonna have a.
I would lock it.
Usually there's a-
And that's underground.
It's the manhole cover.
It's right there.
Probably gonna be 1.5 to 2 feet down.
Is there a requirement that has to be like tested once a year?
Technically, no, but it should be. You should
And the only
exercise
time you're gonna
that.
use that is when?
An emergency, or you need to do repairs in it, you could lower the lake level.
No.
Now, the little lake over on 20, Windover Lake. is that what it
Right,
is?
They open-
They have a big valve.
right.
You drain the lake like in the winter.
Yes, a lot of Adirondack lakes with dams do. So yes, you have to have a drain. There's no way we could go in for a full dam replacement without a drain.
Is there an option that you might be able to get it into the berm between the existing auxiliary spillway and the new one you're proposing? is there enough elevation there that it could come straight in on GLC property and then be in that berm, even if that berm has to be just raised a little bit between your two spills?
No. Your pipe will be exposed for most of the section of the rock. So,
And it can't go underneath the cement.
no, it would have to like go, it would literally have to go down. Because we're putting foundations into. And they technically don't allow
No.
it. It's a hill point and it doesn't work hydraulically because it wouldn't be sloping this way. It would slope this way and then go under and have to go back up.
No, there's gotta be enough elevation at the bottom. Well. Yeah. I bet there's at least 5 feet off the backside of that.
Oh, correct, but I'm bringing it down because they're now.
Here.
And remember, it's a 36-inch pipe, inside diameter. The pipe itself, I think it's a 4-inch thick for concrete, so
Okay.
36-inch.
it's big.
Yeah.
That's
It's that, yes, RCP
the
is
size of
36
our
inch
culvert.
RCP is ideal.
Culvert is 36 inches, I believe.
Oh, it's a person.
Cheese is my favorite thing. I can't eat
So
it.
they require that to be,
Already have to- You don't want me on more
Screened or something.
like rebar, is there like rebar or something like that they require to be in front of that? Or is it?
That's such a
open?
big pipe.
I can discuss it
Well-
with what they want.
It's a big lake. If you gotta drain it. in
I
2
might,
weeks.
I recommend a very open bar screen, very open.
Yeah.
Because you don't want it plugging up.
You don't want to play it up, but you also don't want little people to go in there and
Yeah.
work.
Well, I guess you wouldn't be open it when little people are around.
We were talking about the
I'm
drain.
just thinking about getting rid of the turtles.
Suck the turtles out.
So what we have now that doesn't work is an 8-inch pipe.
Yes,
And it's-
something like that.
Yeah, it-
Going from an 8-inch drain to a
It
36.
was never meant to drain the lake.
Yeah.
It was just a little ways down so they could lower the lake.
That white pipe?
The little pipe that's.
Old drain.
No, the white pipe was put in by the fire.
Yeah, it's still up there. I see it before.
It had nothing to do.
Gotcha.
And you can put back, it's called a dry hydrant. They can put the dry hydrant back, just it needs to be in a little bit of a different spot because there's not gonna be there anymore.
So
So
are you saying
Yeah,
that
we'll have to figure
they
that
were
out later.
required to use the 36 inch?
Yeah, yeah.
Or that's.
I hope we never have to.
that meets their regulation. So you're required to have a drain
Yeah.
that drains X volume and X time and this meets the calculations. So,
Hopefully we're never gonna.
Well,
What about? It hasn't been mentioned, maybe we're gonna get to it. but Catch booms in front to keep logs from going, or you don't care about? it? I'm
I'm
not caring
less
about the logs,
concerned-
I'm caring about like a kid
A
in a
kid in a
kayak
kayak.
that can't control.
if you can
kayak.
choose to put you can choose to put,
Swim fence.
swim fencing or whatnot. But if it's anything permanent, then DEC might claim it's gonna impact the spillway capacity.
So like if you had cable,
Yeah,
or some type of cable going
Yes.
across the mouth. Or
correct.
somebody you grab
Yeah.
on.
Yes, but if you build something semi-permanent that they could argue could hold back flow, then that's a problem. But yeah, it's something with buoys, just indicators, like see them everywhere. Just something, if people are getting too close.
But if you put it far enough out, then it would restrict boating access from like the boat is that.
Yes.
So if you put it out here.
Yeah.
Like warning.
At the end of the day, I'm picturing this as if someone is going to be funny on a kayak, and try to go through one of those culverts if there's enough flow. I mean, it's a big culvert. They might have it. They're going to be able to kayak through.
And then-
Yeah.
Call Fred because they'll need a rescue on the other side.
Yes. So I like to say is, you want to be stupid, be stupid.
Well, sometimes,
Every week renters are walking in through there, fishing off the logs.
Oh, yeah.
At least it's something where it's big enough where they really aren't going to get stuck is what I'm getting at. It's big enough where you're going to go through, you're going to be on the downstream side, hurting yourself because you're being stupid, but you're not rescuing someone from a from like
You
a
can get the
round
body
culvert.
from
No,
the other side.
no, you're gonna rescue them because they've gone down
Yeah.
the spillway.
Yeah, putting
Maybe
something
they get
simple out
products.
like a barrier with buoys, I mean, I think it's visually enough to be like, if you pass this, you're just being stupid.
I guess what we worry about is that a kid
Right.
doesn't know better, not an adult who knows
Yes.
better and
Yeah.
hurts themselves, but a kid who, you know, it happens.
Mhm.
I mean,
They were just here 2 weeks ago.
I mean, I have one of those in one of my
Crazy
kids, she
kid
would
who
go
hears
through
this
and she'd
thing.
be like,
They're
well,
gonna
let me down and not care.
It's
Hold
not-
on, she's fun. It's my fun kid.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, even if you put. the
all of
line
these
there,
plans will require a temporary dam, a temporary.
Absolutely, this is, we're gonna have to figure out how to route traffic around this.
That was my
Um,
question, how we're. He's gotta have access. and this lot.
Yep. Is we would have a very large temporary bridge right about in this area,
Where are you from?
just before the dam.
Just before the dam.
Yep.
Can it be made out of, those floating military type of buttons?
I don't know if there'd be much floating.
There's no
If
water.
we're gonna let
I
the
would
water
say
out.
it's gonna be almost like a temporary style bridge.
Wait,
That-
I'm confused. You were pointing downstream.
yes.
I wouldn't do upstream. I don't know, like,
No, but that's what they were,
I wouldn't go all the way.
when you said above the dam, I think they thought in the
Oh,
lake.
no,
In the lake, right.
Yeah, see, they thought in the
oh,
lake.
okay,
That's not what she's saying. She's saying
No,
downstream in the spillway.
Connecting to the private road, Ross Mountain.
So are you putting a cofferdam in here or something? to Hold everything back? Instead of draining the lake and stuff?
oh,
No,
we
we're
would,
going
and this would be fall, winter work. This would not be. APA wouldn't even permit this to be spring, summer for fisheries reasons. Which, yes, you still need access, but at the end of the day, at least it's potentially fewer vehicles than right now. Any option we choose, we're gonna have to completely get rid of the road for.
Would they allow them to work on this after October 1st? I know I can't work on my bridges and culverts after that. because of-
Yeah, if we're gonna build a temporary bridge on the north side of the dam. If we were to make that bridge a permanent bridge, would it allow the dam to be different, to be easier, to be nicer looking?
Technically, but we discussed that it's a substantial. You're taking pretty much all of the lands of Weymouth out and putting a new town bridge. You're dealing with APA and DEC on a new bridge versus a dam rehab. Everything's possible, but I look at as you're probably not going to get that property owner to agree. I am not speaking for them, but I would.
If
I would have a serious problem if I was that property owner.
Well, is Steve on the call?
No, we couldn't get the.
Well, because this is not used, one thought was we could get that. And since he owns the other side, extend it and he'd end up with more waterfront than he has. So it might be a trade-off that could work.
Well, and if,
Are you going back to the concept of putting a bridge and a dam sort of thing?
yes.
That's what you'd have to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that, and I think at this point, unfortunately, you potentially are gonna get money for construction of the dam. You are not gonna get money to build a bridge. There's the issue. For this purpose, there's Bridge New York money, but it's to deal with,
I put in for 5
yeah,
and I got nothing. Cleveland Road was one of them. Crosby Road was another.
you have to
Cleveland
be
Road was
so
a-
deficient. You have to be so deficient structurally to get, there's money out there, but there's also, everyone is competing for that same pot of money. So you absolutely are not getting grant money to build. I'm saying is everything's possible in engineering, but I try to be practical of the issue at hand is the spillway capacity on the dam is if you're basically doubling your potentially double, triple in your construction budget and significantly delaying the project because of APA DEC fisheries involvement. APA and DEC fisheries have a say in the dam reconstruction, but dam safety engineers, they make the final call. So it tends to be, they just say, look, this is a health safety issue, permit this. The thing you start adding on stuff, APA is like, oh, we need to have a public comment period, and you know, the anti-everything people send letters and they don't even live here. No, really, that's what's gonna happen. So this is keeping it to, this is a significant permit. This is gonna take a year to get a permit. We don't want to open up a can of worms to start saying, all right, you know, and then at the end of the day, it's a Tom and Johnsburg Bridge. So you're gonna have to deal with all the legal ramifications of having a town road now here. So
we're gonna have to rebuild the road anyway, the road and
Yeah.
bridge.
yes. So you're getting a road and a bridge and a dam and one structure. Yes, at the end of the day, everything would have been better if it was a separate structure, but we don't have that.
That would have to be designed ahead of time before the dam could even be.
Correct, it would have to
considered
be-
because of pylons and pier construction for the roadway, which is now gonna affect your spillway, and then
Yes.
your dam design will be even broader, because
Correct.
they have big concrete things holding up a road on the opposite
Yeah.
side.
If you had unlimited budget, then I would say pursue this, but realistically, we don't.
We go for a trestle bridge.
It would.
So everybody buy a lottery.
Yeah, first.
Is it a billion or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Kathryn, if you go to your, to plan number 4, which seems to be the better one for the lake. What do you think the cost is gonna be? I know this is just a little guess.
I would say between $500,000 and $1 million. The issue is I gotta get, the process is you pick which option you'd like us to pursue, getting it to permit level design plans, and we get a cost estimate. I haven't designed the foundation yet, so you know, that's gonna be a significant consideration as well. So it's not cheap. And none of the options are cheap. Let's think, it's not like one is $100,000 fix. These are all significant capital projects.
So
And if you
is
have to
it
have,
is it possible it can be as cheap as only $1 million?
I would be surprised if it was over $1 million.
but we have to have a temporary bridge, and
Yes.
who's paying for that?
It would come out of the project, yeah.
Right, so how can it be just $1 million? I don't,
But the temporary bridges, a lot of them are core of engineer bridges.
Yes.
They don't destroy it, they just take it away.
Yes,
and
they're-
it's farmed.
You rent it.
oh,
Yeah.
you rent it?
Yes.
It's a
We own-
rolled out bridge, and you hold it back up and take it back away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just moved it off Glen Creek Road.
Yeah.
It's in the shop now.
Yep.
Maybe it's 50 feet.
If it's long enough, if it's long enough.
That's the thing, it might not be long enough for what you're looking at.
Right.
When they bought that bridge, to rent it was $38,000. To
Mhm.
buy it was $48,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. You crane it, set it.
Yeah, they're very, I'm gonna say they're hokey. They're structurally sufficient, but
You have to
You're
go
driving-
slow over
you're driving
them.
over the thing going, okay, but it works.
It's out there on Glen Creek Road for 5 years.
Okay.
Temporary.
Before
It
I-
had to sit somewhere, might as well sit over Glen Creek.
Yeah, and that's something we look at is if you have one, the biggest thing is with budget, unfortunately, is where's the source of funding? I'm gonna go in and do estimates based upon this is a completely private bid job. If it results in that the town has a portion, then we have to pay prevailing wage, and that's gonna increase the cost, so. We'll see where we go with this. But the benefit to this is, generally speaking, I'm gonna go with everything precast because we want speed on this. So, you're paying more for the material in a sense, but labor is a factor.
Plus, you don't want it to be going through the whole winter, if you can get in there early
Right.
and get out.
Yeah.
You get a plow truck over that road? Temporary road? Must be able to.
The width
I
of
think
the
you
structure,
know.
sorry, width of the structure is the same, or is it? a
I'm
little-
keeping the
Has to
same,
be a little wider.
I'm keeping the
for-
same road width,
20 feet.
21.
Does the,
If we can narrow it,
Half the bridges we got are one lane. so-
that's one other consideration.
Well, how does that help?
If I can narrow the road, then it's just less,
Less
I'm
material.
building less stuff.
Yeah.
Still costs
New
less.
bridge we're putting in, I think for 16 feet wide.
And that's all final design considerations. And
Wouldn't change that.
No, yeah.
yeah,
I
so
know what
the
you're saying.
actual hydraulic, we'll call the hydraulic opening is the same. If you can say, hey, you can cut 3 or 4 feet off that, then that's less material, less grading. So again, all
The same
the,
impact for manual.
agreed.
But you still have to get the fire trucks and field service.
14 feet, right?
Yeah, it's more that if the town is willing to permit it slightly narrow, it just has to pass a fire truck one way.
Got
And the discretion actually is finally with first the town highway superintendent and fire chief, which I'm assuming you might be both,
Everything.
right? No, look at your shirt.
He wanted to be both, right?
Well, highway superintendent, yeah, chief. That kind of falls in your lap.
But you know what I mean? It actually is ultimately your discretion. You have a right to say, no, I want it to be exactly what I have today, which is what
I
I'm
don't have
showing.
an issue. going.
But if we can shave off a few feet at the end
Our
of the day,
temporary bridge is 16 feet wide.
Okay, so final design, we can,
final
Discuss
design is
that
when
next.
we start, can we shift this a little bit to the north? That's where we start playing around with. Again, it's not like you're gonna see a substantial change, but adjusting stuff a few feet here and there actually really does make a help, especially if we're talking about people's private property and access to the lake. So
so if we can figure out something where we could shift it maybe 10 feet north. And be a little bit off our property. Is that out of the bounds of what we could think about from?
no,
Finding
I would
these
say
options.
that's probably the max we want to discuss. Again, this is a replacement of a dam, but if we start to do stuff that's substantially different than what's there now, that's when EPA starts to be like, oh, hey.
Hold on. Yeah, okay. And then, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Mhm.
We had the boring worked up. Did any of those results impact what we need to understand about
No, they're actually really
design
good.
and construction?
They're better than we thought.
We knew that all the
Because-
time. So how are they good?
Your
Well, I
sand
haven't
for,
read
your
anything.
sand for 30 to 60
Forever.
feet forever.
Why is sand good?
It allows us to be more flexible in options for foundation design.
Okay.
If we had rock, we would have to tie back to rock. And that would be your one option. We have more flexibility.
Okay.
We're likely to do a spread foundation with a cutoff wall. And it's just cheaper for construction. You're not digging into
What,
rock.
I don't know what you just said. Can you explain?
Foundation, like your house, foundation, and then a wall under it to prevent seepage under it. If there was rock, it would be a very expensive foundation to build.
So we don't have ledge there.
It actually shocked the geotechnical engineer that there wasn't rock that deep.
Yeah.
Because most dams in the Adirondacks, they go down to rock. That's how you built them. You built the mill, you did this, you put it down to bedrock. They just lay the structure literally on the bedrock. They wouldn't, but if you have bedrock, you have to pin your foundation to the bedrock. That's expensive. If you're digging into bedrock, that's expensive. That's what I say is,
Basically, you can just float it wide enough on the sand base that it's stable.
yes. And we don't have
But
to.
do you need anything underneath it to
Yes,
prevent?
Yep, just certainly. But we're not paying to cut through rock, which that's why I say is it's good from that perspective.
Do they get all the way far enough down, second boring to show that?
So in this rehab redesign, the whole dam, what's underwater, that's all gonna be replaced?
Yes,
Okay.
nothing will remain.
You're gonna be doing 2 more designs?
Oh, no, we're gonna discuss, the next steps are, if you want me to pursue the lesser spillway option DEC, I can. But ultimately,
That was option 2.
yes, ultimately you will choose an option and we will proceed to permit level design, which is about a 75%, which all that means in terms of engineering is it's enough to give a significant, an accurate cost estimate and an accurate representation of what the permit process would be. And that's the biggest thing, is you want to get to the point where you have a cost and, you know, plans we can start discussing, you know, hey, DEC, APA, what would be your schedule for us to get through the permit process? Because basically how it works is we issue 75% plans, we go and do the permit process. And during that time period, we go to final, you know, bid specifications and whatnot, and we wait. Because generally speaking, at the end of the day, if we choose a reasonable option, I just think option 3, again, I showed it as kind of a, this would really piss off the permit agencies, is they're going to approve this because dam safety is going to say, from an engineering perspective, we need this. APA, biologists, just
That's
follow.
fine, but it's only
Yeah.
70 feet shoreline. of
Yes,
Several miles.
yeah.
So.
And it's an existing dam that they documented needs to be upgraded. That's the thing, is it's gonna take a while to get through the permit process, but if you go with something that is towing the line of this meets DEC criteria from engineering perspective, APA and DEC biologists tend to, yes, they review it. I guess they're gonna say something. They're gonna be like, we want willows here. Okay, fine, willow plugs, fine. They're gonna have to say something as they have to, but they're not gonna elevate you like they would if we were moving the dam here and putting new bridges, and almost like they're calling it a new action for APA, but it's really treated as a rehab. I mean, you know how it is with APA. They don't want anything new. And they have all these permits for altering shorelines. So we have to go in saying we're altering shoreline. We're not gonna, you know, at face value, we're altering the shoreline. At face value, we're filling in stream. Are we filling in wetlands? We are. We will be impacting the environment. But we have to, because the dam is insufficient. It's not because we're trying to build our house, you know, or a new subdivision road. But still, the process takes a while because it does.
I'd be happy to elevate my frontage a little bit.
So you want,
And get better.
so which is the one that you?
I think option 4 is the one that makes sense
With the
for
lower,
your operation.
Too low.
Um, I suspect that you like option 2 because it's
Is there a way to
less.
do like a hybrid between option 2 and 4? So there's a little bit more.
I tried that, and what ends up happening is you need like an 80-foot wide spillway. So it's somewhere in between. Yes, I tried that.
Yes, but with
You know.
option 2, even with the 60-foot, they let us go with the lower flow rate. At least there'll be more flow going through a 60 over it as opposed to 95.
Yes.
And then it also gives us more room to wiggle in around the final elevations in around crossroads between Manning's property where Curtis Beach
Yes.
is.
Yep.
So we can kind of manipulate that. So just.
And that's why
aesthetic.
I would like, with your permission, to go to DEC to ask if they're gonna let us go with option 2, which is an overtopping. I would like to, just because Alon Dominitz, who was the section chief, left, and he was the one that said he'd be willing to consider it for this dam. But at the end of the day, if anything we're gonna do is a waiver from their design standards, I want their buy-in before we go to final design. Because if they turn it down, then that's actually just a waste of your investment, like. But I don't know. Again, because
So you'd start with a simple ask, yes or no, they'll either just go. "Oh,
Hey,
consider
the old
it."
guy said he was gonna do it. What do you
Well,
think?
they
No,
would
he didn't
say,
say he was.
present to me a plan that works. And tell me why you can't do it.
Yep.
And I think they're gonna see a plan that works and go,
So what? Do it.
because at the end of the day,
Figure it out.
it's a big difference to you. It's
No, it's all
not a big,
right, I get
it's
it.
not a big difference to the dam safety engineer. It's actually not a,
It's not a consideration at all.
it's really not a huge difference. If they sat there and looked at it, they'd go, you can make this work with basically the same impact as one that doesn't. You know, other than it affects, you know, I would be shocked if at the end of the day, they ultimately allowed option 2, because if, let's just say the only way to make this meet criteria was we needed a dam that was from here to here, right? Something totally, utterly, we're not gonna build a spillway that's like this, we're not going to, it makes no sense. I've demonstrated that I can get this to fit in generally what the Lake Association owns, in generally the same alignment as the road, that I would, again, I'll advocate for option 2, but at the end of the day, I would be pleasantly surprised if they let us go with that.
Well, you're not gonna show them this if you're gonna show them 2. First, you're gonna show them 2. If they say no. then
Well,
then-
they already said that they need to,
Oh.
you need to prove what, you need to present. How this works
Oh.
with them is you
Oh,
present an option that 100% complies and explain why it doesn't work.
The first thing.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
So basically,
Yeah,
I'm
you
gonna show
said
them
that
what
be-
works. And
You
they're
said
gonna
that before,
go,
I
"Oh, it
forgot,
works."
okay.
Jeffrey's on the phone and I think.
I just want to know, I'm sorry, is option 2 significantly cheaper? Is that the?
It's about 20, it's like 1 box culvert less. So at the end of the day, I would say it's cheaper, but not proportionally such, because you're still paying for a temporary road, you're still paying for the foundation, you're still paying for the drain. So it is cheaper.
950 grand instead of $1 million.
I would say it's probably, I don't know, 15 or 20% less off the cuff. It's less material, but it's still the same for so many of the parameters.
But the size of the box culverts is smaller than the other options, so it looks more similar, I think, to what we have now, rather than the other designs.
I'd
It's
love
still
to see,
substantial foundation below this thing.
I'd
Oh,
love
yeah.
to see a picture from a
So
kayak
it's
looking at the
just,
dam.
I'm sorry, but so it's just, and I don't want to take everyone's time. So the reason for option 2 is aesthetics and possibly cost savings.
Yes, yeah, I would
Say it's more,
Put some greenery in there, some sand, show me what it looks like. I mean, it'll render it. You know what I mean? Is a
I
rock,
know
is a
what you're-
factory. I'm gonna watch my kayak.
Well,
That's all.
you know,
So-
apartment-
You can push it from the backside.
Yeah, I'll go up the,
you're gonna go through the gold.
funny, but I'm gonna drive home, I'm gonna cry, so.
Bob Manning's point about the future of these regulations is important. Because not a long time ago, the steel rotator head was a quick fix and a great solution.
Yep.
Here we are.
Didn't last
working
that
for a
long.
time now to change that.
So other considerations we need to have is if we go with option 4, which is the larger spillway that fully meets criteria, do we discuss, you're gonna have to have a discussion with property owners about this. I mean, I'm sympathetic to the fact that it's cutting off your access. I think, and this is not something that I would, be the leader, but there's gonna have to be some discussions because there will be work on private property. We're gonna have to get easements. You're gonna have to grant an easement. You're gonna have to grant an easement. Do we look at decisions of, who are we impacting and do we work amongst private property owners to mitigate the impact? You're probably gonna have to have that side conversation outside of any engineering that I do.
No, I think that's reasonable. And if we could move the whole structure 5 feet north to give the property owners on the lakeside, Weymouth, Curtis, Manning, so it actually increases the amount of, it's a trade-off. If Weymouth would,
You can still aesthetically fix the banking afterwards.
Right.
Moving the whole structure doesn't really do much. So depending on how you treat the grading after the project's done is how you can create some of the stuff.
And that's all final design considerations
Right,
is,
yeah.
again, we're raising the road up, so your access is gonna be steeper than it is today, regardless of where the dam
Right,
is.
but there's not gonna be those rocks there and there could be a nice little sandy
Yes.
area. I'd
Yeah.
give up 50 feet of that for a 20-foot sandy.
And that's
beach.
where,
But some of that can work in the aesthetics as they grade after the project.
Well, if it's
Well, there's no spillway, then it doesn't matter. I'm gonna get a dock too.
So when you look at these figures on the left, when you look at figures on the left, like option 1, it shows the blue angled coming around.
Yeah, these are the property lines. We usually show
So-
them black and white, but I have them color coded.
Right, so the blue on the left side
Thank you.
is showing Garnet Lake, but also the area that you're trying to say.
Right, I'm trying to say,
And right now, we've minimally impacted on the Weymouth ones,
Mhm.
right?
Right, and I get that I'm behind the 8 ball because I don't own that land, but I just have access to
Yeah, no, I
my deed,
understand.
so. I
Yeah,
get
and
that.
again, I can shift stuff over. At the end of the day, we are gonna need temporary easements from several private property owners.
Hmm.
How they grant it to you, that's not, Seeking can prepare easements, but we're not preparing the legal language. I guess you could do this without easements, but that's at your risk. I mean, you're the owner of a construction project. You probably should obtain legal permission to be on the lands of Weymouth, on
Okay,
the
I think-
lands of Manning.
So this little.
All right.
I'm not gonna do that for you.
Pause, Jeffrey, I think, Jeffrey, did you want to add a
And
comment?
yeah, I just gotta add, I'm sorry, temporary construction easements are one thing, but option 4 looks like it's within the property line. Am I misreading this chart?
You're reading it correctly, but Jeff, likely once I go to final design of foundations and whatnot and put in the low level drainage, you're gonna have infrastructure on private property. So it's likely that you're gonna either need to do a lot line adjustment between GLCA and a private property owner, or have a permanent utility or, infrastructure easement.
Well, and Jeffrey, if I think that a possible solution, if the whole structure got moved north, even just 5 feet, we would be impacting Weymouth's property on the east side, but then it helps the beach side for Weymouth and Curtis.
But irregardless, Kathryn's point, we're still gonna need all these easements.
I
because
know.
The low level drain's gonna run
Yes.
through private
I
property.
know, I get it, I get it.
And can handle those negotiations, and Jeffrey can write the paper. Right.
Well, we figured that one out. later. It's just something to keep
Yeah,
in
it's
mind.
something that no matter what option you choose,
So-
you're gonna have to.
So where are we now? Is this the presentation of our options and we're now, the clock's ticking to pick one? Or is there more to come in details? before
Well,
we get-
these are conceptual plans that, I think if you're okay with me reaching out to DEC, I can reach out to DEC and set up a meeting with them. Maybe down at their offices or remote, and maybe, have Roy pop down, just to say, look, we would like to know if you consider an option where we allow overtopping of the road, and just present it to them and let them ponder. Again, they're gonna say, can you make this work? We can. I'm not gonna lie to them.
Oh,
I'm
so, okay,
surprised that we could make it work at that
Or,
level of easiness.
yes, that's what I'm getting at is, this is better than I thought it would be.
all right, so the overtopping model number 2. It wouldn't, we would have to get permission for overtopping, and there's the issue of DEC is constantly upgrading their requirements. So it doesn't make sense to me to go for an option that doesn't meet their requirements, that we have to get special permission, and then 5 years from now, 10 years from now, they say, okay, well, now we've decided you have to fix that.
That's fair.
Yeah,
And
I would support just figuring out option 4, the placement of it
Yes.
to maximize, to make it work for everybody. But then we know we're meeting the standards of today. We're not behind the 8 ball before we get started. That's my personal
And
opinion.
this is your decision to make. I agree with what Anna's saying from that perspective of, if they ever increase the rainfall rates, which they will, because then in 10 years, when you have to redo your engineering assessment, you're
Gonna
now
blow all these
even
out of the
less
water.
compliant.
Yeah.
Here, at least you're more compliant. Yeah, and the thing is, it's your project, it's your budget. It doesn't hurt to ask, but I really do think at the end of the day, they're gonna say, just build what complies, because it's not substantially different than what
So-
doesn't comply.
So really, for our argument's sake internally, then that's 1 versus 4.
Or 2.
Oh,
Wasn't
yeah,
option
1.
2.
Well, option 2 is the one where we need DEC permission.
Right.
Option 1 or 4 are essentially the same, except 4 is a low flow option. I think we all agree that
And a little
that
bit
is,
wider, so.
5 feet
it's-
wider.
They're the 2 fully compliant.
Yes.
Yes, and 4 is wider because it has the other.
It's-
culverts is higher.
4 is
Yes.
5 feet wider than option 1.
And it's
But-
longer.
It gives you,
And just one more question, I'm sorry if I missed it. The footprint of option 4, without moving it north, other than temporary impacts, will it impact either the west or the east? I guess I'm looking north. That's what I'm trying to understand.
I think it will,
I'm
because you're
sorry.
looking, I think it will, because you have to install the low level drain, and this does not show the foundation limits. I think any option we choose, any location we choose, we are going to be permanently impacting private property.
Thank you.
So as the project's finishing out, everything's completed, the equipment's leaving, on the final grade, how much can we get away with grading in a little extra beach? I mean, I can see where your elevation lines are coming up on model 4, and they only come up about 4 feet. So the final grade from where the road surface now comes down, and the work has gone underneath the drainage or no drainage. The final grade, I mean, nature's gonna change stuff significantly anyways, but.
I'm matching existing conditions
Correct.
because,
And
yeah,
we're dealing with the grade of the road because our elevation
Yes.
and our length has changed, but at the end, when we start to finish out, maybe there's a budget for trees, there's budget for cleaning up the area. Yeah, I mean, that's my biggest concern.
Agreed.
I've seen some
Agreed.
projects pull out and they leave it in worse condition than
Yes.
they start.
Yeah.
The grade can be everything, and we can massage the grade after this is all signed off and we've walked away, and we're just putting some soil back.
as long as you're not altering, you're not filling in lake,
Right.
front, yes.
Right.
Yes, we can throw in a little extra 10 feet of grading to get a better beach and just hope that the fisheries people don't notice.
It's gonna change anyway.
No, really,
Yeah, I mean.
but it's within reason. If all of a sudden you're going 100 feet down, they're like, oh, this has nothing to do with the dam.
But if we could get
Yes.
agreement that a narrower road meets everybody's needs.
Yeah, then
Correct.
We
it's,
could take that whole, what is it, up to 4 feet maybe in width?
it's 21 now.
21 now, so we'd be 5 feet right there.
You
So
could
we
add
can
5
massage
feet on the
the neighbors
lakeside,
out.
to work with.
Yeah, and then just again, from an engineering perspective, I'll engineer it, and there we go. And then we sit down and we go, all right, where are we tying in grades? Where are we putting, stone? Where are we putting?
And the benefit is
Said
that
you
we
can
have.
move it,
a
yeah,
big-
a few
we're not
Exactly.
worried
So,
about the
like-
drainage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just moved the whole thing. just-
Yeah,
Yep.
so the whole thing. If you
And then it helps both sides. Because, I mean, he has an incentive to move it this way to get more. And
I
then
would say
if the
they-
road is
I would
here
argue
rather than here,
they're
you can
done.
put bushes and trees.
Please remove it, because if the contractors
to.
remove it, they have to put it back.
So just trying to figure out how to get a little more space on Curtis's side. If you move more over this way, but then we'll have to Weymouth, we have. more of a
Right, so
problem
now you're
over
dealing
here.
with the Garnet Lake ownership of one side
Yeah,
and a private owner of
that's
the
a
other.
problem.
And that's why I say is you probably, I would say the lawyers involved would probably recommend that if we shifted it to the north a little, that Weymouth would do a lot line adjustment with the GLCA. I'm saying that practically speaking. You want all of your dam to be on property you own. Again, this is all just stuff that you're gonna have to.
I'm sure he doesn't want the dam.
What?
Well, no, we're gonna build
I
a
like the
nice-
jam we have.
We all. I know, it's
Both of
falling,
that.
it's falling apart, it's a whole.
Option 6.
The dam's like, look, I'm just really old. I don't be current. code. I'm done. Have a little
He's
goodbye,
working on that.
goodbye celebration.
Catherine, just,
As far as my land is concerned, I will give any land that's impacted by this to the GLC.
Thank you, Bob.
Wow.
All right,
We're gonna do our best
we
to
need
not.
75 feet.
I just need 20, Bob.
There's now Garnet Lake Marina.
That's where the Garnet Lake Yacht Club was.
You forgot how much rock there is.
There is a lot of rock that technically, we're gonna, technically speaking, there is gonna be a steep slope coming off Crossroad on the south side. Is we can just put in like a very permanent reinforcing mat versus riprap. Like that's all final design consideration.
And cover it with sand.
They don't
or
like
can you
that,
use
so.
riprap that appears to be steps?
Agreed. You could, yes, engineer, we can do engineered stone and engineered, yeah, it
20 feet of beach, Catherine, it's all about.
No,
As to the future, is there a schedule that DEC upgrades their dam safety regulations that they did it in 2008? I don't know when they did it before that.
that was
so-
like 89. To be honest,
89.
comes from the fence.
they upgraded the regulations in 2008 because Hadlock Pond failed. And I think they needed to upgrade their regulations and just, you don't do anything until there's an emergency, right? What I suspect they will upgrade will be as climate data comes in, they will update the rainfall you have to use for these design floods. And that won't be them, it would be NOAA. NOAA determines this, NOAA,
Mhm.
not DEC. DEC just says, you have to design to the 100-year, the 500-year, the half PMF. They don't tell you what rainfall rate to use. So as the climate data, basically the 100-year flood, which we're not designing to, has increased in all of upstate New York in the past 20 years. It continues to be updated literally every single time they have data. So technically, yes, that component changes. The seismic criteria always updates. Every 5 years, New York State Building Code comes out, they update the seismic criteria. Again, it's generally not substantial enough that now you're fully non-compliant, but I do know that we had seismic changes between 2009 and now. So the seismic criteria that if someone did an engineering assessment in 2009 would be different than today. From what I understand, it makes more sense, it's better, but regulations always change, whether or not DEC says change the regulations. It's the
So-
baseline data that they feed from. changes.
But we're hoping this is at least a 50-year structure. And in 50 years, the regulations are going to change so much that this is going to be considered
Obsolete.
obsolete.
Correct, if the flood event goes higher,
The Cosby one's worried about that.
yeah, you have to
I'll be
look
done.
at what you have in place. And that's the only argument to the non-compliant structure is that if DEC updates their rainfall data, it's even less compliant now. That would be the only,
That's our
Concern that
takeaway for discussion, picking a choice.
yes.
Well,
But
and
if you come back in a week and say, please reach out to DEC and discuss whether or not they'll look at the overtop, and that's fine. But I would just say, look, I'm gonna meet with them and, we'll make a decision after I weigh in.
So you're willing to go ahead and explore that and see what
Well,
they say?
My question would be do you really want to do that if the end result is they probably are not going to allow it? Do you want a further delay?
Yeah, they'll look at it as a fishing expedition on our part.
I've done it all the
Which is what it
time.
is, but-
I've done it before, and knowing the engineers there, they're not gonna be mad. They're not gonna walk in and just, they're not gonna be like that, but it just further delays the process. But at the end, I really don't think they're gonna say yes.
Well,
So at the end of the day, they're not gonna say yes right there. They're gonna say, we'll take it under consideration. And 6 months later, they'll get back to you.
I mean, it's only been 13 years already.
Mhm.
So what's another
Well, the money
6
available.
months?
Got the money.
Well, we have the design. We'd like
You
to
don't
get it.
think
We'd
she
like to spend it.
Yes, at the end of the day, the other option is cheaper. It is, it will be cheaper. It's not like it's half the price. It's,
You're still cutting up, digging out all the land, pouring all the stuff. It's just, the price difference can't be 10%.
And at this point, I don't want to say cost isn't an issue, because it will be, but if you're thinking the whole structure's gonna be $1 million, so it'll probably be 2. We get a grant, that's fine,
Yeah.
we got money.
again, I won't go to DC unless you say so, and I'll definitely frame it as, this was brought up by Alon a few years ago. We're seeing if you even have an inkling in allowing us to do this. And I know they're gonna be wishy-washy and, geez, well, you have a design that works. Why don't you go with it? Okay. It's going to be a non-productive conversation. At the end of the day, I think they're gonna say no. But they'll say it in a totally vague way that will completely confuse everybody
So which
involved.
action do we plan?
Whether we have the lessers
Two.
go away.
Catherine,
Option two.
in the opposite direction. Is there any way that you can do to the dam design that's not going to be outrageously expensive? they make it last another DC, flood to,
Rainfall
regulation.
increase.
That's also designing for constraint that allows for floodplain to be at the max. And if we try to ask constraints of overtime, we've already compromised ourselves down the line.
Correct, substantially.
We might as well just buy out all the property. and push downstream.
And reduce the hazards.
We'll make ourselves a B because there's nobody downstream to die.
Well, we have to do all those places.
You talk about expensive, that's
Yeah, but
expensive, let's go buy out every property.
Yeah, to be fair, there was one property that was causing you that high hazard classification, I would recommend you buy them out. Seriously,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
at the
yeah.
end
But
of the
it's not.
day, if you could buy one property, reduce this down to B, maybe have to do some upgrades, but much less,
Yeah.
then that would be the route to go. And actually, DEC probably would be like, can you do that?
Yeah. Alan would.
Well, yeah.
He would have.
Well, and it wouldn't even be them, it'd be your engineer saying this hazard downstream is no longer there.
But we don't have just one.
That's why it's like 10,
Right.
No, I
so,
got some ideas we
Yeah,
should
it's a bunch.
discuss. Just for the next step after we fix something.
yeah.
We should.
All right, well, we don't have enough of the board here to actually
And
make a
I
decision.
I want you to review this. I mean, I'm not,
Yeah.
I wouldn't think, I don't expect you to make a decision today. We can go down and take a look at things. But again, these concepts are to just really show you from a hydraulic perspective what we're talking about. Really, don't show foundation limits. Final grading. If this is general grading, we can play around with it somewhat, but really, we have to raise the road up. We have to extend the spillway. And this shows you the magnitude. It is impacting land all the way. Yeah, I mean, you're doing grading from your front yard to Bob's front yard.
Yeah.
This is,
No, I want mine dug up some so I can get better.
What is your timeline as you see? The beginning of construction?
if we proceed with, say in 2 weeks, you're like, go with whatever option. And we'll bring, that's about a month or two to get to the point where we'll have the cost estimate, we'll have the report, we'll have the 75% design plans. I would say it's a good year for permits. So we'll say, fall, winter this year, a year for permits, so construction in 24.
All right, so we're not doing any construction until there's grants, so.
Yeah.
We don't have the dough to pay for the whole thing
And again, we
out of
might,
pocket.
if you intended on doing construction next year, we could file a request for an expeditious permit, but
No.
No, we
have
don't.
other little,
Some ducks in.
we're doing little rehabs in a few places up here along the lake, like small dams, class A dams, and they've just been sitting for 8 months with APA and DEC. And they're just like resurfacing a spill. They're like super simple, and just they're busy. I don't know the best way to describe it.
Okay. Another question. The wetland survey, did it identify any issues we'd have to go explain to other agencies like
Well,
trouble birthing? and
no.
Anything like that?
We're gonna fill in wetlands, we're gonna have to deal with that process. But basically, what we file is called a JPA, a joint permit application with DEC Dam Safety as the lead. Then it goes to DEC Fisheries, it goes to Army Corps of Engineers, and it goes to EPA.
Will any of them come out and do their own inspections
They can.
and stuff?
Safety's gonna be number one.
Oh, they will. I
Agreed.
didn't want to get hung up on turtle birthing area.
I mean, they could bring it up and we'd have to discuss it.
Yeah. Well, the
But,
picture
Turtle
show.
birthing.
so.
yeah.
Snapping turtles?
The thing is, they are allowed to and probably will put limits. APA DEC Fisheries.
We're gonna destroy what's a traditional prehistoric birthing site where they lay their eggs every.
Yeah.
And that's all gonna get dug up
Yeah.
and redone.
And we just have to,
And if it's rock, they're not gonna be able to go back in and lay eggs.
and
So
we have
they
to,
move
we
it
have
over
to,
here.
we have to react.
Joe, they didn't lay eggs there before the dam was there, so I don't.
Before the sand got put in there. And you're on the rocks, so you probably have a hard time taking a hold.
So
At
I
the end
don't
of the
think they'd
day,
win that argument.
at the end of the day, when, CT Mill does permits all the time. At the end of the day, we fill the permit and it's, 14 volumes of just junk. Is we put those letters from dam safety saying your dam is basically falling down.
Unsound.
We right on top. And dare them, be like, oh, you.
Oh, please help us. Sure, make it be shorter and louder. That's fine.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
yes,
that's
we
all.
will document, and deal with them and answer their questions and placate fisheries people and placate, at the end of the day, we will throw the dam safety record back at them if they really honestly give us a hard time. And say, are you seriously holding this up? Because this, of course they call your dam, what did they list it at last time?
Unsound fair. Unsound fair.
Which is, your dam's not failing, but they're not dam safety engineers.
And isn't the bridge also what functionally obsolete, or how was that rated?
Something like that.
Yeah, oh yeah, we put the engineering
that in there too.
justifications on the top of the application.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
All right, so what are the next steps? We need to.
You need to think and then give me direction. And yes, I will go to DEC and advocate for you about a lesser spillway, but I don't think it's worthwhile, but I don't think it's gonna result in anything. But if you'd like me to investigate, absolutely I can. And then once you told me which option you want me to bring to a higher level of design, that's when we start doing the foundation design. It's when we start getting, structural details. We decide if we're gonna shift it a little, if we're gonna narrow the road. That's where all these design considerations come to play. But from a hydraulic perspective, this is your size.
So before we go through that state.
Well, no, this meets their criteria. We're not involving, if you go with an option that fully meets DEC criteria, I'm not talking to DEC
Okay,
until we go in with design
so
plans.
it's only if we want to push.
If you want to push
option
for
two.
option 2, yep,
And how much cheaper do you think option 2 is?
it's 30 foot less than culvert. But it's not like it's gonna be a third,
Yeah, it's
95
$50,000.
versus 60. But it's not gonna be,
It'd be like another color.
yes, because at the end of the day,
One less color.
you're still likely excavating that portion to put foundation
You're
in.
still putting in a temporary bridge. You're still digging up the
Yeah.
whole hole. You're still doing all of the.
It's kind of like saying a 1,000
It's
square
not-
foot house is not half the cost of a 2,000 square foot
Right,
house.
so it seems like,
It's cheaper, but not half.
it seems like it's pretty obvious if you see the set, well, why don't you just?
That's why, is if I walked in with option 2 only, they'd say, oh, what option actually meets our criteria? And I'd be like, 2 pages later, they look at me and go, oh, they're basically the same. Really? And if you think from their perspective, they care if the option that meets their criteria is literally not constructible. Like, we can't build this. We need 500 feet of spillway and we have 100 feet, something so obvious. So we're coming in with a pretty poor argument, we're not.
Okay, great, but yeah, sure. If you take that dam out completely and rely on the lip over there, that design flush is still gonna overflow everything, flood people downstream.
What they would say is there's
And they say
no
there's no.
embankment to fail.
Yeah.
Yep.
Want to own the old post office.
We took out what?
If you take everything out
If you took the dam
and just
out,
take it out,
it was still flooding on
you'll still flood the homes. It'll still be.
Yeah.
Dangerous flooding in
No,
a
it just
36-inch storm.
Yeah, but
33.
it wouldn't be a wall of water. At one point.
Yeah.
Steady increase, you wouldn't have this giant wall of water. Which is what washes everything away when it hits it, coming downstream especially. Once it gets down to the main flat.
Correct. Oh, yeah, it just gets out, but, again, I do think that I was surprised that I was able to get an option that actually worked. Really, I was going into this running my cows going, I'm not gonna be able to get an option that works. But, once I talked to Fort Miller, once I confirmed dimensions, once I had all the topo to see how much I could raise the road up, I was actually pleasantly surprised because I bound the problem of, I don't want to raise the road up any more than 1470 because then the approach is steep. once I kind of bound the problem and said, these are the parameters I have, I was actually surprised I made it work. Just because kind of what we did originally in the EA, I was just like, oh, you know.
I think it's pretty obvious. If there's somebody on the bridge.
No, those trees are in the way. Some of these guys come barreling up. to the
Yeah,
road.
well,
coming up,
a lot of those
around,
trees are,
We're gonna be done.
a lot of those trees
But
are,
they don't even know to look, so.
yeah. And again, the decision about narrowing the road is 100% on Fred. Obviously, if you look at it and say no.
Fred, buddy,
you're
come
upset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can do that.
That's
I
something.
mean, I wouldn't bring it to like a literal 1-lane road, but, you know, it will have, you'll have
If we
guide
can
rails. I
get-
mean, this is gonna be,
If we, well, we'll talk. about that. We can shuffle.
Yeah, I
it just a
suspect the
little
highway
bit.
law may dictate the minimum width of the road.
4 to 5 feet on the thing, we could gain some amount over here that
Will you
might
hear me if I
make
speak?
it.
Less
We have the highway superintendent here.
Yep.
Jeffrey.
Okay, I didn't know that, I'm sorry.
Okay, so
but really what you're doing
He's
is,
okay
it's gonna
with it.
be asphalt to concrete and then guide rails. You're
Yeah.
not gonna have a nice slope to walk on. It will be a little bit, I'm gonna say industrial or urban, if that's a nice way of putting it.
across this area.
Both
But
sides.
yes, but at the end of that.
Correct, it'll go
Yeah.
back, yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll be pretty steep for a bit.
Yeah.
So the majority
Oh,
of this
well,
is gonna be pretty
there's-
steep.
I'm looking at that saying, well, it's just, we're going flat all the way across.
Yeah, this is 5 feet of
Oh,
grade
okay.
difference.
Yeah, okay, from.
That's why I say,
down there.
and again, this is us, we could flatten this out more, do more grading on Manning's property. You know, and yes, we're gonna choose, you know, guide rails that are Adirondack aesthetic. Yes, we will. It's not that much more cost to make something look nice. Like, really.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're gonna have a bunch of giant box culvert side to side to side to side to side. Basically, it's you're putting in a bridge that is a dam.
And we can't put glass tiles.
Yeah, so it is gonna be concrete. Just to let you know, it's 14 inches box culvert and will immediately go to the road section. I assume you want it to be paved, right?
Yeah, we should. I've got 74 miles of dirt already.
Well, when you say a box, so I picture a box being just one big standalone box put together,
It's
so.
like a rectangular tube. And then you go boom, boom, boom.
Okay, so these, so like here, when I'm looking at it, I see a box.
Yep.
I expected I'd see a box top.
Yep, the top, so this is the top here. It's just drawn, it's drawn as one section, but it'll be literally just fit together.
Okay, so there'll be, basically, these two things will come up in here. So there'll be just gaps between each one of these.
Yeah, I mean, I just drew that, we had to draw it straight, because otherwise it's just very like jarring
Okay,
to see.
and then
but-
there'll be gaps all along the bottom. Okay, because it's gonna have concrete on the bottom.
Yeah, concrete bottom, yeah.
So how do you keep from having expansion problems and other stuff like that with cracking?
The foundation below it is what is it's gonna sit on. So that's gonna address that question. It's concrete, it will crack, no matter what you do. It's the foundation design is key to preventing unnecessary cracking. But at the end of the day, they will, over time, there will be cracks. It's just how it is, no matter what.
So they like steel reinforced or some other kind, so don't they historically rust inside? from
All
the
the,
inside
all,
of the
it's all,
concrete?
we can spec it better,
We
yeah.
put in galvanized pipe,
Yep.
all that's been rusted.
Yeah. Yep.
Hmm.
You know, we can talk to Fort Miller about, you know, coatings or additives to the concrete for long term, you know. Anything we build will have maintenance. Anything.
Hmm.
What?
Well, if we put in steel culverts, obviously they put some kind of coating on it, they
Correct.
still eventually.
That's why
obviously
it's-
rust.
Well,
Yes.
we'll find giant tube stainless guy.
Yeah, right.
All right, so the ball's in our court
Yeah.
to give you direction.
Please think,
Okay.
yeah, you know, if anything, this is the point where I will let you ponder, ask me questions, but, you know, I think all of you understand that it's a major replacement. You
Yeah.
know, we're not gonna sit there and go, let's replace one of the culverts.
Yeah, we know that.
Asset, if one actually failed, could you just cut the road out and drop it in?
If it failed today, I guess we'll not. You would have to.
Our span right now is 336-inch culverts, correct?
They're technically 6 feet wide, 3 feet high, they're arches.
Kind of weird.
The ones we have now.
Yeah, yeah, they're technically called a 6-foot arch pipe, which means nothing. It's 6 foot wide at the bottom.
Really? It's 6 feet across? No.
But it's like 3.5 feet high, so to the eye, it's very deceiving.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right, so it's 6 feet wide, we have 18 feet.
Yes.
At most, depends on where.
And as the water level goes up, it drops.
Yes.
So again, this option of a 20-foot is mimicking in a channel situation, basically. No, about 20 feet wide. You know, you have 3.
That's what we have now. We
Right.
have to add on.
That's agreed. Well, sorry, what you have now is take a line and stop it there. What you have now is this. That's what I say is, you have this now, you need, just demonstrate how sufficient, you know.
Well, if we took the, so if we actually figured out.
I know. It literally is this. It's like there.
That's it?
That's
What
how
you
much
have
flow
is
we have.
18
going
feet.
through
Yeah.
there.
What you have now is like this little section here. Because again, we're raising it. And because I'm using box culverts, I can get as high as I can with very little road depth. Makes the most sense. If we were to do like a typical plastic pipe, you need like 3 or 4 feet of soil. Pipes don't break.
And back to the road, why do we have a wooden bridge down on Mill Creek? Wooden
cheaper.
slats,
It was cheaper.
but here we'll have it paved because.
Because we're paying for it.
Well, I asked him
The
because
town stuff.
Well, no, but we don't pay. Well, maybe we would. initially.
That needs stuff, we're gonna be back in.
Yeah.
yes, if anything, you would at least get them to pay for that.
And
But
permanently,
remember though, is you're paving all this too.
Yeah.
Gotta remember, you're grading and doing earthwork on everybody from the Mannings to here. So it's not just this that's getting paid, it's the whole stretch.
So the town, supposedly putting 15,000.
As part of the engineering.
So what do you think about over part of it? Because I remember at one point.
I
you said-
actually just invoiced and I charged them $5 grand for part of it, just because I decided I should start having the time.
So far, they-
Oh, I'm not picking out an invoice. I'm just saying you're paying a percentage. I'm not saying you own X.
Oh.
I was like, I'm not gonna get involved in that discussion. Andrea, another contract with Andrea for $15,000 out of $85,000. So I'm just billing them kind of as it makes sense percentage. But I absolutely couldn't have them pay for any component of the work that involves survey. Because then the
Because then
survey
the
price would
rates
have been
and
higher
all
as the rates. would have been higher. So I made it abundantly clear in the contracts that the town's not paying for survey, because then someone could audit it and say, why didn't CT Mail pay their, or Brian Biggs Clark Davis pay their crew's prevailing wage? I said, no, technically, the Lake Association's paying. Yeah,
All right, are we,
I have time. I've got till about another hour. I'd say 45 minutes. If that's okay with you guys, we can take a walk.
guys want to go down and look at?
You'll, I think we'll find a number of us will be interested in the final.
Yeah, yes,
Just in a little.
yes, and that's why it's like,
It's not like you've already
yes,
spent a whole bunch of time on the property impacts.
yes.
To the degree we can.
I've got you